But this is a serious subject. I had a case, and I'll tell you about it. It was my daughter, when she was like 6 years old, used to play with one of my patients' little girls. And they would go over each other's house, and they would dress up and so forth and so on. And she was about 6, and my daughter was 6. And this was during the summertime, when she would spend a lot of time with me at the office. One day, I got a bam, bam, bam on my office door, okay? And I was like, oh, who is that, okay? Open the door. It was this mother crying like crazy. And you know what she said to me? Dr. Abbott, my baby's dead. All right, and I said, what are you talking about? I brought her in, sat her down. She had had an asthma attack that night, went to the emergency room at Harbor Hospital Center. She died the next morning from asthma. Now, why is that significant other than the tragedy? The child did not have what I considered moderate or severe asthma, okay? Happened within 10 hours from the time she went to the emergency room, okay? Shocked me, okay? Had to explain it to my 7-year-old daughter why she couldn't go play dress up with her friend, okay? It's a serious problem, okay? Had a 14-year-old young man, okay, was in foster care, being taken care of by his grandmother, okay? Mom and dad were not around. Had 2 other younger siblings, okay? All right? Got a call from Protective Services because they were taking grandma to court because he had died from asthma. Now, why did he pass away? I don't know, because he was supposedly taking his medication. But what would he do? He would go into his room, as typically 14-year-olds, adolescents do, close the door, and stay there. Wouldn't tell anybody he was wheezing. Grandma, not wanting to cause any problem, he was a quiet kid. When she found him that night, it was too late, okay? I had to go to court because they were threatening to put her in jail for not taking care of her grandchild, okay? Eventually it was dismissed, but she went through such depression. She was admitted to the hospital because she couldn't deal with all the depression. So the point I'm trying to make is this is not something that you should take lightly, okay? Now, in South Baltimore, we have a lot of patients. A lot of our patients are underserved. They live in underserved communities. They don't have insurance or they have medical assistance. They're undereducated. What do we do to help those patients? Well, what are some of the disparities we deal with? Now, you've heard all these things already. I'm just going to summarize it for you so when you leave here, hopefully it'll be fresh in your mind. Of course, lack of insurance is a big problem. Lack of knowledge about asthma. Not just patients, though. A lot of medical providers don't have an adequate knowledge of how to treat and manage asthma patients. Why? Number one, because it's scary, all right? When my nurse, Phyllis, says, Dr. Abbott, we have little so-and-sos here, and mom says he's wheezing, my anxiety level goes up about 10 times, okay? Because I know, even if it's mild, all right, I got to jump on that right away, all right? I got to make sure they get a treatment, put them in the room, okay? Give them a pulmicort, give them an albuterol right now. This is even before I've listened to them. Why? Because I don't want to wait, okay? All right? And when I get in there, I make sure that I ask mom, when's the last time you got medication? How long it's been going on, okay? The nurses are jumping, okay, do you need anything else, okay? I'm thinking, well, I need to admit this child, okay? So knowledge about asthma is very important, okay? And a lot of times as physicians, we take our knowledge for granted. You got to keep up to date. 10 years ago, I was afraid to use a steroid. Now I'm afraid not to use a steroid. Complete 360, all right? Social issues at home. Okay, well, again, so many talks today about social issues, okay? You know what they are: lack of insurance, lack of education, all right? Half of my kids now don't live with the mother and or father. They live with, I call them the caregiver. I don't say, where's mom? I say, who's taking care of this child? I used to say, where's mom and dad? Half the kids come in with their mom, okay? I used to say, where's dad? You know what I say now? When's he getting out? Okay? Now you laugh, but half the time they say, how'd you know? Well, I didn't know, okay? Why is that important? Because mom has 3 kids, she's doing it all by herself, so when you say educate her about asthma treatment, asthma knowledge, it's not going to happen, okay? Again, we talked about lack of insurance. 65% of my patients have medical assistance, 20% have a medical assistance that's ineligible. And I said this earlier, why is it ineligible? When they had it 2 months ago, because they didn't fill out the paperwork. So social services didn't put their forms in. It's sitting on a pile on the social worker's desk because it's incomplete. So when they come to me and the registration says, Dr. Abbott, I can't put them through because their insurance isn't valid, what do I say? Put them in the room, okay? I'm not going to let that child go home without being seen, okay? But I don't care what finance says, put them in the room, okay? 20% have commercial insurance. I have commercial insurance, so like I said earlier, my child, if she had asthma, thank God she does not, is probably going to get taken care of properly, okay? I'm going to make sure she gets her medicine on time, and make sure she takes her steroids and so forth and so on. I don't have that luxury with 80% of the patients that I see. Lack of knowledge about asthma. Need extra time to talk about asthma with your patients. Show them a picture. It is true, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I have these charts on my room, all my rooms are everywhere. I now can go and I say, Mom, see this right here? And they look, and they're like, what is that? This is what your baby's lungs look like when he's having an asthma attack. See that? And you'd be amazed at the discussion that we have. All of a sudden, things that were in the dark become, oh, that's what you're talking about, okay? Well, when they go to the emergency room, they don't get that. What do? They get clinical information, okay? They get a sheet of paper that tells them what happened, what we did, and I say, Mom, let me see the paper. I can't even read it. So when they come, they had no idea what they did. Mom, what'd they do? I don't know, they put them on a machine. What they give them? They give them steroids? I don't know. And you know what else they do in the emergency room that drives me crazy? They give them albuterol, and they don't give them a prescription. And they say, follow up with your doctor in 24 hours. Well, I often want to know, how do they know I'm going to be there tomorrow? Okay? So what happens, they can't see me in 24 hours. They see me 3 days later or 4 days later. Did you get the prescription filled? No, they didn't give me one. They said they had to get it from you. Mom, that was 4 days ago. I know. I just shake my head. Let's move on, okay? But you see the problem. This is what goes on day in, day out. This is what you have to deal with, okay? Need to inform all the caregivers, okay? That grandma who went through hell with the protective services because that grandson died, okay? She did the best she could. I had to go down to court and testify that it was not her fault, okay? It was trauma for me. I spent 6 hours waiting to go into court. Eventually got in there and explained them. And when the CP people saw me, they were like, he actually showed up, because they don't expect doctors to come down and do that, okay? Medications, albuterol, inhalers, so many different kinds. It's confusing. It's confusing to me. Steroids, parents are still afraid of steroids. I may not be afraid of them because I know about them, but parents still are. You say steroid, even the kids say, I don't want to get no fat muscles, I don't want to be fat. No, that's not the same thing. It takes time. You got to spend 2 or 3 more minutes to explain that to them. Other drugs, Primatene Mist. Have you ever heard of Primatene Mist? The worst drug in the country, okay? Why? Because they can buy it over the counter, all right, and they overuse it, okay? It should be off the market. Handheld nebulizers, great if they know how to use them, all right? But like I said earlier, half the time the medicine squirts out of the side of their mouth, all right? They're not getting what they need to get. So you have to spend time teaching them how to do it. Every time they come in, okay? How much medicine should they use? You think if I say take 2 puffs every 4 hours, they do that? You think they do it every 4 hours? Nope, every hour. Why? Because mom is afraid something's going to happen to her precious child. So she gives it to him every hour, which is why after a week they need a refill on another albuterol. Another reason they need another refill is because they're not only is that baby using it, that child, but grandma's using it, the next door neighbor's using it, okay? It goes around. If they are lucky enough to have a nebulizer that works, you think that just stays in that house? It goes over to the daycare place and they use it over there, then they use it over at grandma's house, okay? And then it breaks down. Well, sometimes I wonder, did it really break down, or they're just trying to get another one? Because we give out free nebulizers, okay? And do I think sometimes they do other things with those nebulizers? Maybe. But my concern is that that child has the ability to use a nebulizer. We talked about social issues, the allergens, the cockroaches, and the mice, and so forth and so on. I told the other group, I've been in some of the houses in Cherry Hill, and it's absolutely deplorable, okay? I mean, it was so bad, you could actually hear the mice in the closet as you're sitting there talking to the patients, okay? And one little girl, bless her heart, was about 5. She said, Mommy, the mice are in their closet. She was so comfortable with the mice that it was part of the family, okay? All right. How can we improve it, okay? Enhanced patient education, I talked about that. Drug refill clinic. Now, we have a drug refill clinic, and if you ask me, Dr. Abbott, what's the #1 thing that you've done in your clinic to help your asthmatic patients? It's our drug refill clinic. I know what you're thinking, what the heck is a drug refill clinic? Well, it's expensive, but what we did, we hired a pharmacist, okay, part-time, to come in 2 days a week, 2 4-hour sessions a week. It could be Monday for 4 hours and Friday for 4 hours. And instead of patients coming in to see me for a refill, they made an appointment at our refill clinic. So they got their prescription refilled. They went over how to use their inhaler. They went over how many times they were using, the whole gamut, okay? Now, we did that for about 9 months until you know what happened, right? Ran out of money, okay? So, of course, the doctors had to start doing it again, and, of course, the program went down, okay? Luckily, now we restarted it again, and we're starting to see the improvement in compliance and so forth and so on. I'm not saying we'll be able to keep this refill clinic going. I'm not saying you'll have the luxury of being able to start one. However, we found emphatically it was the most important thing we did to improve compliance with our asthmatic patients, as well as our diabetics and COPD patients. Go to the source of the problem first, schools. I used to go to a lot of schools and talk about asthma, but I found that that wasn't really the key. You know why? Went to one school, and unfortunately, they were having the student-teacher basketball game at the same time, all right? And they wanted me to talk about asthma. Why? Because a child had recently died from asthma, and the classmates were concerned. So during halftime, they had me talking about asthma. Didn't work, okay? Screaming and running every which way. I said, I'd never come back. And they said, well, we apologize. I said, it's not your fault. It was a timing, all right? Now, I'll go back, but it has to be in a different environment, okay? School nurses. I was talking to a school nurse a few minutes ago, okay? I love school nurses. I love nurses in general. My mother was a nurse. That's why I wanted to be a pediatrician. But they can drive you crazy, okay? Because they love those asthma action things. Oh my gosh, those asthma action. I saw all those forms out there, and when I went by it, I would, you know, why? Because I have to do 20 a day, okay? And to be honest with you, some of the kids I do them on don't even have asthma, okay? But it's time consuming. Why don't I like them? Because I can't tell you what the peak flow is for that particular child because I don't know, okay? So what I end up doing is, listen, I call the nurse, I say, listen, if the child is wheezing or you think he's wheezing, give him 2 puffs of albuterol and then wait 30 minutes. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter. You're going to treat him anyway, okay? And they say, well, you're right, I know, but we have to have this form. So I fill them out and I fax them in and I write peak flow, undetermined at this point, you know, that kind of thing. So, but the school nurses are so important because they really help. I don't take advantage of them as best I should, and I apologize for that. I need to be in closer contact with the school nurses because they're the ones that really, really keep an eye on those kids for me. Churches are important as well. Try to get out to some of the churches in the community to talk to them, but again, it's not as easy because you got to do that during church time, okay? So I'm not usually there in the office on Sunday. Community centers, again, very important. We have a community action group, and they're very helpful in terms of getting people to come in. But the problem is we've tried to do asthma programs. I get the same 8 people every week, all right? Unless you provide a significant incentive, they're not going to come consistently, okay? Now, I'm not going to tell you what significant incentive is, money, but you can imagine what it is, okay? So in conclusion, about 34 million Americans have asthma. About 70% of asthmatics have allergies. Asthma rates increased for children under 5 over 160% from 80 to 94. About 500,000 hospitalizations, probably more than that. 13 million school days are missed each year due to asthma. Serious problem. Severely underdiagnosed, okay? Just because a child coughs does not mean they have asthma, okay? But to a parent, it's asthma and to proven otherwise. Increased number of children uninsured, I talked about that. Be aggressive in your treatment. Do not be afraid to treat your asthmatics aggressively, okay? It's much better to be aggressive and then cut it back than to be non-aggressive and then try to overcompensate later on, okay? I've learned that the hard way, okay? I haven't had a child pass away from asthma. I can't remember when, and I do not want to have one, okay?